Bo, I'm sorry, man. You cut your hair off and now you're like Samson. You're weaker. You're not the same guy. Welcome, everyone, to the Monday edition of Fair Territory. It's the Cubbies coming out of hibernation edition. How about that? On Friday, the Cubs welcomed themselves back into the real world of big market baseball. They made a huge trade for Kyle Tucker, gave up Isaac Paredes, Hayden Wesneski, and the number 14 pick in last year's draft, Cam Smith. We're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about the starting pitching market. We're going to talk about the Athletics. And I'm also going to talk about how I covered the Juan Soto signing with the Mets at the winter meetings. But first, the Cubs. Now, this is a deal I don't know that Jed Hoyer, their president of baseball operations, might have made last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. He's in the last year of his contract. They need to do something. And Kyle Tucker, arguably one of the top 10 players in the game when healthy, I don't even know that that's arguable, actually. If you look at WAR and all those other metrics, this guy's a supremely talented all-around player. He generally plays every day when he's healthy. And I'm just referring to health because last year he had that shin issue, the fractured shin that kept him out for quite some time. But this is a durable player for the most part. So the Cubs get a great player. And they get a guy, yes, who is only under club control for this season. So it's a risk. It's the same kind of risk the Yankees took with Juan Soto a year ago. And yes, the risk did not turn out all that well for the Yankees in terms of long-term arrangements with Juan Soto. But they did get to the World Series with Juan Soto. And that is the Cubs' idea with Tucker. So the Cubs now are in an interesting spot. They could afford to trade Cam Smith because they were sitting on 8 of the top 100 prospects. They've made some other moves this offseason. Matthew Boyd, Carson Kelly, Boyd to the rotation. Kelly will be their backup catcher. Remember last year at the deadline, they also added a reliever, Nate Pearson from the Blue Jays' talented arm. And in November, Eli Morgan from the Cubs. So what's left? Cody Bellinger is left. There is no real spot for him on this team. I've seen some fans talk about how you can keep Bellinger and shuffle some other pieces, but the Cubs want Matt Shaw to eventually play third base. At that point, they would have Bush at first, Horner at second, Swanson at short, and Shaw at third. The outfield would be Happ, P. Crow Armstrong, and Suzuki. That's their team. So Bellinger, the idea of moving him is to clear some of the money. I don't believe that they'll clear all of it. He has a $32.5 million potential commitment coming to him just for this year, between salary and buyout. And we've heard all the talk about the Yankees. It's a financial negotiation. I expect at some point Bellinger will be a Yankee, but the Cubs still need to add to their pitching staff. They need more help in the bullpen for sure, and maybe even another starter. There have been rumors about a variety of different starters with the Cubs, but I like this move for them, the Tucker move, and I like it particularly at a time when the Brewers, at least on the surface, are taking a step back. I'm going to be cautious talking about the Brewers because, yes, while they've lost Willy Adames and Devin Williams, if you remember a year ago, they lost Corbin Burnes, they lost their manager Craig Counsell, they weren't going to have Brandon Woodruff, and as it turned out last season, Christian Yelich played only 73 games, and still the Brewers won the division. So here come the Brewers now. They make the trade with Williams. They get back Nestor Cortez Jr. and the infielder Caleb Durbin. Their rotation now looks kind of presentable. It's Freddie Peralta, it's Aaron Savali, it's Tobias Myers, it's Cortez Jr. joining it, and Woodruff returning. That's pretty good. And they're able to shift their infield pieces around to potentially account for the loss of Adames. So I'm never going to rule the Brewers out. But my goodness, if you're the Cubs, this kind of trade, the Tucker trade, is what you should be doing. You should also be signing free agents. I suggested in my Friday column, the one where I advocated for the Yankees to get Kyle Tucker, that the Cubs, if they got Tucker, should sign Alex Bregman as well. Why not? But I don't expect them to do that. So the NL Central right now looks like a Cubs-Brewers race. The Cardinals are taking a step back. The Pirates, well, they're not doing much so far and still a little bit away. And then there are the Reds who potentially could be there, but right now it's difficult to see them kind of at the level of those other two teams. So that's one thing. Now, as for the free agent market, the rest of the free agent market, yes, we can talk about Bregman and Alonso and Santander and Teo Hernandez, but the starting pitching market to me is the most interesting. I want to take a look at who is signed and who is unsigned, and then we'll get into it a little bit. So far, signed, you see the names right there: Max Fried, Blake Snell, Nathan Eovaldi, Yusei Kikuchi, Luis Severino. Unsigned, arguably the top starting pitcher on the market, Corbin Burnes, Jack Flaherty, Sean Manaea, Nick Pivetta, Walker Buehler, and of course, Roki Sasaki, who has been posted and will be signed by January 15th. So, what do we have here with Burnes? That's the big question to me. It's the most fascinating thing going on right now as far as free agents are concerned. We know that Toronto has been interested, Baltimore has been interested in bringing Burnes back, and San Francisco has been in this mix as well. Now, you never know in free agency. A team could come out of nowhere. Is he going to get his, 7-year, $250 million deal? He doesn't have it yet, obviously, because otherwise he would be signed. And the question I have is it going to get to the point where maybe he is a 3-year high AAV opt-out guy? What I'm thinking is 3 years times $45 million, that's $135 million for 3 years, with an opt-out after every year. It's kind of like what Snell did last year with the Giants. Remember, he had a high AAV and the ability to opt out. It was 2 years, $62 million. He turned it into a 5-year, $182 million deal on top of the 31. That was what, 6 and 213, something like that. Pretty good, as it turned out. So Corbin Burnes conceivably could follow the same path. I am sure he wants the long-term deal, and maybe ultimately he and the Giants can reach some kind of, solution to whatever impasse they have right now. But he is the most interesting guy out there right now. A number of teams still need starting pitching. The Orioles are a big one in this mix, and they do not seem to be spending at the level that some people expected. I wrote over the weekend Jack Flaherty is a fallback option for them. Maybe a trade for Dylan Cease, maybe a trade for Luis Castillo. They're in the mix on all of these different things, but to this point, they really have not done much on those lines. Remember, they did sign Tyler O'Neill to play the outfield. They signed Gary Sanchez to be a backup catcher. There also was a trade over the weekend, a trade between the two teams without a home. The two teams that will be playing in minor league ballparks this season, the Tampa Bay Rays and the, I can't call them Oakland Athletics, the Sacramento Athletics. We can call them that, I guess. The trade was Jeffrey Springs over to the Athletics in a 5-player deal with a draft pick coming back to the Rays as well. Interesting trade. Obviously now it gives the A's a second veteran starter to go with Luis Severino. Springs, really brilliant 2022 season before he got hurt. And obviously 23 was out with Tommy John. Came back last year, then was shut down in September. But he's a guy when healthy and right, and he should be, is one of the more talented pitchers in the game. You see the details right there. The Athletics got Springs and Jacob Lopez, a reliever. The Rays got Joe Boyle, a 6'7", 240-pound righty who is extremely talented. He throws extremely hard. The issue is he has a hard time throwing strikes. Will Simpson, Jacob Waters, and also a draft pick, a comp pick coming back in that deal. So that's a good deal for the Rays too. You take a flyer on Boyle, you get the draft pick next year. They have 4 of the top 51 picks in next year's draft, potentially 3 of the top 39. So they're in good shape with the draft. They always need to be when you're the Tampa Bay Rays. One thing with the A's too, keep in mind, as Evan Drellick and I reported, a week or two ago, they're a team that needs to reach a certain payroll level, or at least with their competitive balance tax payroll, their luxury tax payroll. They need to get, I would imagine, up around 100, 105, because there's something in the CBA that says a team must spend 150% of its revenue sharing take. So they calculate this by luxury tax payroll. The A's have to keep spending. They need a third baseman. They also have talked about potentially adding another starting pitcher. Not a bad idea. And you're going to see them do a few more things, at least this offseason. So there you have it at the top. Tucker, the starting pitching market, the aggressive A's. Time now for the Inside Dish, the part of the show where I talk about maybe a story I've written, maybe a trend going on in the game, maybe something else entirely. And today I want to talk about how I covered the Juan Soto signing, because it was quite an interesting night to say the least. And it was an event or a moment that as a journalist you could prepare for. You knew it was coming. You knew Juan Soto was signing somewhere. It was probably the Mets, Yankees, Red Sox, Blue Jays, or Dodgers. Those were the teams in it. So I had something ready. I actually had almost two things ready, and I had to tweak them, and I'll explain the process as we go along here. But let's start with the actual news itself, the news that broke with this tweet from Jon Heyman at 10:10 p.m. Eastern last Sunday night, actually a week ago Sunday at this point. 10:10 at night, Juan Soto to the Mets, $765 million, 15 years. Now at that point, the news is out. We confirm the news. Other reporters do get more details. I reported that they had a $75 million signing bonus in this deal. There were other details trickling out as well. The opt-out was quite interesting. At first, it was just reported that he had an opt-out after 5 years, and then it came out that the Mets have the ability to void the opt-out, if that's the way Juan Soto wants to go, by adding $40 million to the deal, by making it an $805 million deal. So all of that was coming out, the news. It was exciting, of course. And at that point, I had a column ready, and it was a column that I had written, I don't know, maybe a week or two before in anticipation of the signing. And it was a column going back to Soto's rejection of the 15-year, $440 million offer by the Washington Nationals in 2022. There's the headline. In landmark deal with the Mets, Juan Soto gets what he wanted all along. And if you remember, going back to that rejection of the Nationals deal, that deal at that time would have been the biggest deal in baseball history, $440 million. It was not a situation where Shohei Ohtani had signed yet. This was the deal that was going to beat Trout and be the number one deal. And at the time, a lot of people thought, what is Juan Soto doing? Who is this kid turning down that kind of money? Well, he didn't like the AAV, and mostly he was unsure about the future of the Nationals, who have been for sale, not for sale, all kinds of intriguing things going on with them, but uncertainty. So he rejected the deal. He was pointing toward free agency. What happened next? Traded to the Padres. What happened after that? Traded to the Yankees. So in that column, I kind of went through the whole thing. And all I had to do once he signed, and once we got through the news part of it on Twitter, X, was update the numbers. And even now, the numbers blow me away. I don't know that I included this in the column, but a $765 million deal is almost a 75% increase over $440 million. An $805 million deal is almost actually over an 80% increase over 440. So obviously, Juan Soto did what he wanted, accomplished what he wanted with that deal. Now, that column comes out, I don't know, about 11 o'clock that night, maybe 11:30. I don't remember exactly. And that afternoon, I had been working on another column, anticipating that Soto was going to sign. And this one, the second column, was more about whether the contract would prove a good idea, whether it would age well. You see it right here. What will Juan Soto's contract look like at the end? The Mets can worry about that later. That was the theme of the column. Now, that column, I had it going, and I had some thoughts that I had put together. Obviously, there are certain players in this game who have aged extremely well. I mentioned Edgar Martinez. I mentioned David Ortiz, and I mentioned Paul Molitor as three. And I know Ortiz has the PED suspicions. I get it. That was mentioned in the column. But I'm just talking about guys who performed into, I don't know, their age 39, even age 40 seasons. And then there are other examples in the sport. Albert Pujols is one. Ken Griffey Jr. is another. Miguel Cabrera, perhaps the most outstanding example of this, who declined sharply in their mid-30s. So I drew all those comparisons, kind of had that ready to go. But then when the opt-out language came out, I kind of had to redo this column, or at least keep writing, because Juan Soto might never get to 15 years with the New York Mets. It's going to be a really interesting decision at 5 years, assuming he has 5 great years. And I think we can assume Juan Soto is going to have 5 great years. No reason to believe otherwise. At that point, he's entering his age 31 season, and you've got to commit $40 million more on top of what you already paid him. It's a little bit daunting because of the examples that we've seen with other hitters who have declined. And who knows where Soto will be defensively at that point. If he's trending even more toward a DH, if he is a DH by that point already, that becomes an interesting decision. So that was the second column. And that one came out the following morning. I worked on it after the first one was posted. And I don't know when I finished, but it was whatever. Doesn't matter during the winter meetings. There was no clock. You just keep going. And there was one other story I was working on as well. And this was a story that the staff at The Athletic had been kind of trying to put together for weeks in anticipation again of the signing. And it was basically how the deal came together. Now, we knew we weren't going to have all the details immediately, but we had a lot of details. And you see it right there. Inside Juan Soto landing the biggest contract in pro sports history from Steve Cohen's Mets. 4 of our writers, including myself, contributed to this story. Patrick Mooney wrote it. Will Salmon contributed, as did Brendan Cuddy. Will is the Mets beat writer. Brendan is the Yankees beat writer. Patrick is normally someone who covers the Cubs, but also is doing national things as well. That story we had been working on, and we polished it off late in the night. It got pretty late out in Dallas, and that story was posted immediately the next morning. So my workflow, or at least what you saw, was the Soto column, the first one, at about 11:30. Then the inside story of how he signed, that came out immediately in the morning, as did my second column. It was a wild night, and it was the kind of night, actually, that you enter the business for, that kind of excitement. Even though we all knew this was coming, even though we all knew it was going to be big, it was bigger than I think most of us ever imagined. And to me, it was kind of electrifying. And I think most people at the winter meetings felt that way. And again, I'm not talking about this from a fan perspective, a Yankee fan, a Red Sox fan. This is a different thing. I'm talking about from a journalist perspective, the news itself. Okay? So don't jump me for this. But it was so exciting, so electric, that night I had trouble sleeping. I had trouble kind of putting my arms or my head around what had just happened, because the deal, not only is it, of course, a record number, $765 million, a record AAV, there's no deferrals, the opt-out thing I mentioned, the $75 million signing bonus, and in the end, I had an agent the next day ask me, exactly what did Steve Cohen say no to with Scott Boras? And I don't have an answer for that. Every clause that Soto could have wanted, including the suite, including a no-trade clause, all of it. He got all of it. And it was a fun thing to cover, and that was how I at least went about it. We'll be back after a quick word from AJ Przinsky, Eric Kratz, and Scott Braun.
FT fam, check out the latest masterpiece from Manscaped, the Chairman Pro Electric Foil Shaver. It's like Rudolph for your face, guiding you to a smooth, irritation-free shave.
Head over to manscaped.com and join the over 11 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by using code FAL20 for 20% off plus free shipping.
I wrote up a wish list of what I'm looking for in a modern shaver, and Manscaped nailed it. 2 interchangeable skin-safe blade heads for either the super smooth feel or the clean, manly stubble look. A precision lock for a more precise shave when you want it. Waterproof? Check. 75 minutes of runtime on a single charge? Yup. A travel lock so it doesn't turn on by accident, and an LED spotlight to help you see every detail.
Get the Chairman Pro today and experience a shave that is as smooth as you deserve. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code FAL20 at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code FAL20 at manscaped.com.
Time now for Grillin Ken, the part of the show where you get to ask me questions. Let's get right to them. This one comes from, parts unknown. The question, Bo Bichette cut his hair. Is it time to amend Ken's Best Flow in the Show award? Oh my goodness. Whoa, what are you doing? Haircut. No flow, but same cool Bo. Well, that's according to the Toronto Blue Jays. They don't remember, perhaps, that I gave Bo Bichette Best Flow in the Show, non-Bryce Harper division, and now I must revoke that honor. Bo, I'm sorry, man. You cut your hair off, and now you're like Samson. You're weaker. You're not the same guy. I have a new winner, however. And my new winner, well, San Diego Padres legend, soon-to-be legend, superstar, I should say, Fernando Tatis Jr. Fernando Tatis Jr., he was right there with Bo Bichette for Best Flow in the Show, non-Bryce Harper division, and you see it right there. If Tatis cuts his hair, we've got a real problem. So there's the answer. Tatis, new Best Flow in the Show. Bo, you're out. All right, next question comes from the Monster's Lair. The Monster's Lair, whoever that person is, asks, is Roki Sasaki holding up the pitching market some? Are teams wanting to see if they have a chance to win the lottery before shelling out big cash for the other free agents? Is this slowing down Burnes, Flaherty, etc.? I have an easy answer to this question, and the answer is absolutely not. One thing has nothing to do with the other. Roki Sasaki, he's going to max out with about a $7 million bonus. If you sign Corbin Burnes, let's say you do, and let's say you give him $250 million, you can still take Roki Sasaki, and we'll happily take Roki Sasaki for that max amount of $7 million or so. So again, one thing has nothing to do with the other, and Roki Sasaki, his market is entirely separate from everything else going on. And in fact, every other team, or every team I should say, can bid for Sasaki because even the small market teams can afford what he is going to cost in that bonus coming over as an international amateur. All right, next question comes from Mike, Memento912. He asks, if the Red Sox miss out on Burnes, are they more likely to sign a Manaea Buehler or trade for a Castillo Jones? Good question. I assume, Mike, you're referring to Jared Jones. I don't expect the Pirates to trade him after moving Luis Ortiz to the Guardians, but he's been out there. His name had been out there. What will they do if they don't sign Burnes? I don't know, but they certainly need another starter. And Buehler would be kind of a short-term idea. And he's an interesting guy, obviously, because he pitched so well in the postseason. Those 10 brilliant innings after that difficult start in his performance against the Padres, 10 scoreless from that point on to the end of the World Series, including the final out of the World Series. But before that, in the regular season, he had not been good, coming off a variety of injuries, including a major elbow surgery. So he's a bit of a risk, but he's definitely an intriguing guy because of what he has accomplished in his career. Manaea, it seems to me, from everything I understand, he's looking for 4 years. I don't know if the Red Sox want to do that. Manaea is 33 years old. They're clearly going to need to do something. Flaherty would be another option for them. And yes, one of the trade options would be possible as well, Castillo or Cease. But they just made the big trade for Crochet, gave up a lot for him, so I'm not sure they're going to want to go there. And final question from T-Pop. Hey Ken, why are the Orioles not diving into the deep end on top-notch free agents when new ownership made it very clear that they had the freedom to do that? Good question, one that a lot of Orioles fans are asking. I don't know the answer to this because I haven't spoken to ownership. As far as I know, ownership has not spoken about the offseason to this point. But it certainly is fair to wonder what is going on there. Now, even when the owners say we're going to be more flexible with our payroll than certainly the John Angelos Orioles were, it's still Baltimore. It's still a smaller market, and I wouldn't expect the Orioles to go spend $250 million on Corbin Burnes. That's not something that their general manager, Mike Elias, is likely to do simply from the standpoint of future payrolls. They're going to have to pay their young kids eventually. I don't know that it makes sense for them, but they have yet to do anything big with regard to their starting pitching, and that has been a concern. Certainly, they are worried about the qualifying offer free agents. They don't want to lose a draft pick necessarily. They're going to have a number of draft picks because Santander and Burnes are likely to leave. They'll have like 3 of the top 35, something along those lines. But at the same time, they need another starter, at least one more starter. And to this point, they've yet to get that pitcher or those pitchers. I'm waiting to see how this all plays out. I'm going to withhold judgment until I see the final version of the 2025 Orioles, at least the opening day version. Mike Elias has a challenge in front of him. The pitchers are coming off the market. There are pitchers left. Jack Flaherty is one. They can maybe get him and maybe make a trade for someone else. But their intention going into the offseason was to get 2 starting pitchers, and right now they have yet to accomplish that task. Thanks everyone for their questions. Thanks for watching, for listening. We will be back Thursday with a live episode of Fair Territory, myself and Alana Rizzo. That will be at 12:30 Eastern. You know where to find us, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Have a great week, everyone.
BetMGM first bet $1,500 offer when you use the bonus code FOUL. Get this offer when you download the BetMGM Sportsbook app or at BetMGM.com. Sign up, enter that bonus code FOUL, and deposit at least $10 into your new account. Place your first wager, receive up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if the bet loses. If it does lose, your bonus bets will be available once your initial wager is settled. A gambling problem or concern? There's help. Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Hey everybody, be sure to like and subscribe for more content. Fair Territory airs each week, and we'd love for you to become part of our community. Here's another video you might enjoy. See you next time.